What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Well, for all the videos I make sharing all the tools I possibly can to set you up for success in private practice, I'm not gonna lie, starting a private practice is hard. And this is extra true given that most of us have never really ever been taught anything at all about private practice. So we know it's hard, but we also don't know why it's hard. And it's one of those situations where when you don't know what you don't know, it makes it even harder. So in today's video, I'm gonna name, from my perspective, some of the hardest parts of getting started in private practice so that at least you know what you're up against and you can feel empowered to prepare for some of those things. Welcome to Private Practice Skills. I'm Dr. Marie Fang, psychologist in private practice. I post videos offering tools I learned the hard way about starting and growing private practice so that you don't have to. Now, I'm not gonna lie, private practice has its challenges. For all the videos that I make, it's not just an easy peasy walk in the park to do private practice. So there, I said it. I'm on record saying that private practice is hard. But I do truly believe that if you know what challenges you're up against in advance, then there's a lot you can do to prepare for them to set you up for success. And that's what this video is all about. So let's hop into it. From my perspective, here are the hardest parts of starting a private practice. First, let's name not only one of the hardest parts of private practice, but I think one of the biggest roadblocks for why people don't start a private practice, and that's not knowing where to start. Because if you don't know where to start, well, how are you gonna start something? Am I right? And I hear this from therapists all the time. Like, I wanna start a private practice so bad, but I don't know where to start. And for so many folks, this is the reason why it's been maybe put off for a really long time. Now, it especially makes sense to me that we don't know where to start because with all of our training to become awesome therapists, we don't typically have any training about running a business. And private practice is first a business, and it's within that business that we then offer those awesome therapy services. So we can have all the awesome skills we need to be a therapist, but just not know where to start when it comes to private practice. Now, the good news is there are so many resources available teaching you how to start a private practice. And I'm a little biased because I got some resources myself, so you might find watching some of my videos helpful, or if you would like to just go step by step, I have a free checklist walking through every single step you need to get started in private practice, so that's linked in the description box below if you'd like to check it out. So if not knowing where to start was a reason why you haven't started private practice yet, that is no longer an excuse, my friend. The next hard part of starting a private practice is lack of a clear vision. Or maybe I should phrase it by saying not realizing the importance of having a clear vision. What a lot of therapists do is they realize there's kind of a tasky checklist involved when it comes to starting a private practice, so they run through that checklist without focusing on who they are, what their mission statement is, and what their vision is for their practice. And going through those tasks is important, super important, and relatively doable. You can just run through them, but if you make it through all the tasks and sort of open your doors, but you're not really clear on who you are, what your vision is as a practice, then it might feel like a struggle at that point. Fortunately, I've already made a bunch of videos all about developing a clear vision. I mean, this is really what we're getting at when we're talking about building your brand story. So I'll link to some of those videos in the description box. One of the really hard parts of starting a private practice that I hear over and over again is lack of access. Lack of access to whatever it is you need in order to make private practice happen. So whether it's a lack of access to tools to know how to actually make a private practice, or a lack of access to enough time that's needed to start the private practice, or lack of access to funds needed in order to, dedicate space to building a practice, or like lack of access to role models, social support, people who can kind of guide you along in the process. Now, it may be true that you don't have access to some of the things you need to start private practice in this moment in time, but that doesn't mean that you don't have access to those tools within reach somewhere. Now, depending on what it is that you have lack of access to, it may require different amounts of work on your part to get access to them. Now, if instead the issue is that you don't have access to like a budget or time, then you could potentially consider utilizing some of the free tools that are available and just setting aside a little bit of time on the side of your day job so that you don't have to like quit your job and then get started in private practice while, not having a way to pay your bills and that type of thing. And honestly, once you've prepared for these first 3 items, you kind of have everything you need to get started in private practice. But with that said, I know so many folks who still, after finding access to all of these resources to help make it a lot easier to get started in private practice, will still delay getting started for quite a long time. And that leads us to what I think is the hardest part about getting started in private practice, and that is emotional barriers. Because as we all know as therapists, we can have access to everything that we need in order to thrive, but there may be some psychological components keeping us from accessing those things. I know I went through this myself. I still go through it in new ways in life. And there's a good chance that you've either been through it or you're facing those emotional barriers right now. Now, here's why I think the emotional barriers that come with starting a private practice can be so much more intense than the barriers that come with maybe starting other ventures in our lives. And that's because most of us, before starting in private practice, have been employed somewhere else. There's an employer at an agency or county or a hospital or somewhere who's employing us as a therapist, or maybe it was, at our internship or practicum site, and we kind of have to, deliver on whatever they're asking of us, or maybe what the county is asking of that agency, for example. So if you're feeling kind of sucky about your job in that situation, it can be pretty easy to point to maybe a, not so nice manager that you have at that job, or the broken mental health system overall for why you're not feeling so great at your job. But when you work in private practice, you are your own boss. You are the only person in charge of you and your entire business, at least in solo private practice if you're working for yourself. And that means before you've ever gotten started with private practice, you know that if anything goes wrong, it's on you. You can't say, oh, my boss made me do it. Well, I'm my boss. I made me do that poor choice that now I regret. That's an incredibly weighty thing to hold on to realize my entire business and livelihood hinges on my own choices and making sure I implement the right path for myself. I think I may have rambled there, but it felt worth saying because I think that particular barrier keeps so many folks who would really love to be in private practice from starting a private practice, and that is a really hard barrier to overcome. Now, by no means do I think that this is a comprehensive list of all of the hard parts of private practice. There's only 4 things on the list. There are all kinds of hard parts to private practice. I mean, making sure you stay on top of all of your tasks, like your notes and your bookkeeping, rather than having somebody kind of breathing over your shoulder, making sure you're doing those things. That's a hard part for a private practice for a lot of us. I mean, there's a list. There's a long list. But I think these are some of the hardest parts of starting a private practice, particularly that kind of become roadblocks that keep people from actually starting a private practice. Some of the other hard parts, we figure them out. We tend to they don't become roadblocks. And before closing, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes is a fully comprehensive practice management system. And super cool news, TherapyNotes also has a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform that you can use to meet with your clients virtually, and it's included for free in their EHR platform. So if you're subscribed to TherapyNotes, you don't have to pay any extra money in order to access their telehealth platform, which is pretty cool. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can try it out for 2 months for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful in naming some of the hardest parts from my perspective when it comes to starting a private practice. Let me know from your perspective what some of the hardest parts are and maybe how you dealt with them if you've already gone through it. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well. And this is that was loud. We got baby kicks. Baby, Mom is filming. Oh, I forgot about how hard breathing is. Realizing this over time and then kind of